to 13 artists children should know. Today we're going ahead and going into the global stage of artists throughout all of history in most likely chronological order. Let's get this started with 13 artists children should know. Let's start our journey with Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci himself is technically a Renaissance man himself, who was considered the universal genius. He himself has went ahead and designed numerous things, including this flying machine with a ladder that is literally part of the landing gear. He was also a really successful painter. In fact, that's what he was known for. He painted this, the Mona Lisa, with that mysterious smile, so lifelike, so smooth. But the smile was probably a bit too mysterious, because to this day we still contemplate over what Mona Lisa actually means. He himself promised to never sell this portrait, and he never has. He himself was able to even get into the perspective painting himself too. It was master technique, where everything in the wall went ahead and pinpointed it on Christ. He went ahead and even considered it himself. There was one person here that went ahead and just looked directly at him, and well, there are a lot of people who look directly at him, but there's this one person who's a little off. I wasn't sure which one, so he himself actually gave this clue towards himself. So Jesus has said, one of you will kill me here, and this will be my last supper. And with that, there's this one person who goes ahead and seems a little off right here. He's right next to Christ, and that's about it. He was also a great studier of the human body, and he even drew man. This is called the Vitruvian Man, which is basically like one person standing straight. Let me draw that a bit more accurately with stick figures. One person standing straight, arms wide. Another one, when he goes ahead, stands himself right there, and arms that wide. And the wider arms at an angle is the circle, and the one with the straight one is the square. And he himself studied it and drew it in great detail. In fact, this should technically be censored, but for some reason it is not. Maybe because it isn't realistic enough. Next up, we have Jan Vermeer. Jan Vermeer himself was actually a guy from the Netherlands. He had a secret of glowing colors. And how did he do it? He did like this. He went ahead and made contrast. No one else was able to, well, no one else at the time at least, wasn't able to go ahead and draw this hue of blue or this hue of yellow and so much more too. What this painting though is lacking is red. He was even able to go ahead and make this girl right here look shining like her face is radiating out this much light, and no one else was able to draw colors like him. And then we have the man, the legend, the old guy. Well, we know his face as an old guy. And we have Claude Monet. This might not actually look like Claude Monet because this is from his younger years when he started painting the things as well too. He preferred to paint outside, and so he went ahead and when the paint tubes were invented, he went ahead and bought a bunch of them because that's the only way back then that we can use to go ahead and paint outside. And he went ahead and drew scenes right exactly as he saw them as well too. There were a bunch of these lilies, there were a bunch of these flowers, all this water, this tree, this person here. All that was drawn from the eye. No sketch, nothing needed. And then we have this painting itself. These are both drawings of the ruined cathedral. They were both drawn in 1892. It's just that this one is in the lighter style, this is in the warmer style. And he even drew Arrival at the Normandy train like this. He went to Paris to go ahead and paint because that was the art capital at the time. He was able to go ahead and master the technique of water reflections and things. And he even had his own garden. After his death, his stepdaughter went ahead and cared for it. After her death, the garden was neglected. But then in the 1970s, it was carefully reestablished and the garden went back to its normal form. And then we have this man. This man is called Henri Rousseau. Henri Rousseau. Now, Henri Rousseau is called the painting customs officer because that's literally his job. As his full-time job, he was a customs officer. And then in his free time, he went ahead and painting. And he went ahead and retired at the age of 49 because he wanted to go ahead and spend all his time painting. And for the next 20 years, he went ahead and painted. He went ahead and painted this. It's called the Sleeping Gypsy, and the Sleeping Gypsy right here, she's sleeping, and then, well, so much more has actually happened here too. We may be thinking that this is a lion, maybe she's friends with it, it's just trying to eat her, or maybe she's dreaming the lion. And then he also drew this. Very incredible on how he drew things as well too. And there's so much more to actually talk about here as well too, but we don't really have that much time for it. Next up we have Marie Cassatt. Now Marie Cassatt herself was an American woman in Paris. Now back then, women were actually not allowed to be studying to artists. In fact, they were actually banned from one particular class. Can you guess which one? And then, of course, there's so much more to really talk about. But that didn't stop Marie Cassatt from drawing. She went ahead, learned how to draw, and then she became successful as an artist in Paris. She obviously had a lot of joy drawing this blue couch. The heavy blue shading actually went ahead and suggested that. And she also drew things in a more close-up way too. This painting itself makes you feel like you're in the boat with the man, the woman, and the baby too. You're rolling with that. Maybe it's her husband. Maybe you're in the point of view of her husband. And if not the husband, if this is the husband, then maybe they're a guide. And then we have Vincent van Gogh. Now, when I actually first saw the actual photo of Vincent van Gogh, I was actually kind of convinced that this is definitely not Vincent van Gogh. This cannot be the legendary person, because he looked nothing, at least not similar enough to this. Then again, at the time, he didn't wear a cap and didn't have a bandage on his hair. Now, Vincent van Gogh actually had a lot of mental problems himself too. He went ahead, died of suicide because of recurring problems, and he had terrible relationships with other people too. He drew things, and the way he saw it, if not realistically, sometimes he himself also drew it in colors that can actually be. And back then, a lot of people actually liked his paintings, or at least they didn't want to buy his paintings. They didn't see it worthful enough, and so they went ahead and just thought that he was a terrible artist. So he mainly had to live on his brothers and art dealers' money as well. However, he kept on painting, hoping that one day it would pay off. And after his death, though, a few years after his death, Vincent van Gogh was worth a lot, and today it's worth millions of dollars. And then, of course, he also do different kinds of paintings as well too. The reason why there are Japanese paintings back behind him is that he was a pretty big fan of the Japanese artwork, and he put them in there. This is a bedroom drawing that he drew. The bed stands out because it's different colors from the rest of the light colored, the cool colored places, except for the chairs and the table and possibly the floor. Nothing else really stands out as much as the bed does. And he particularly likes sunsets, sunflowers himself. In fact, the reason why he drew this sunflower is because he liked working with other people as well. He liked drawing alone, sure enough, but he was like one of those kinds of introverts who also were kind of extroverts at times too. He liked working with other artists, and he liked drawing with them too. Also, the problem with that is that this could create some clashes. I've had this myself. Sometimes I work alone. Like, I create a story, I write down the story, and then I ask for art, and then the person, like, I think of this kind of art, yeah, and then the person draws this. And like, what did you draw? Like, in animation, I go ahead and expect something like this. But what I actually care when I ask my friends to draw is this. And of course, I think I kind of understand what Vincent van Gogh had to deal with himself as well too. However, he was still excited, so he drew sunflowers. After this particular sunflower painting, the others have been lost to history. He drew 4 more, and then the rest is up to history. And then he committed suicide, and here we are. Next up, we have Henri Matisse. Henri Matisse himself is interesting because he was a painter of love and life. In fact, the reason why his painting is still known today is because they aren't actually paintings. He did free-seated paintings as well too. He got a piece of colored paper, then he used scissors to go ahead and cut out a picture without even drawing an outline of where to cut first. He went ahead and free cut, and then he painted over it. There's a negative image, and then there's a positive image, and sometimes he went ahead and attached it onto the positive image onto the negative image, into the negative image, and then it went ahead and looked something like this. And then he also liked painting nude women a lot, and so there's a lot to censor here. But then again, it's not that realistic, so there's no need to censor it anyway. This is called The Dance, and for his villa in Moscow, the wealthy art lover and collector Sergei asked Martin to paint 3 large paintings for him. This was one of them, and this ended up being sold for a while. Our next artist is Paul Klee. Paul Klee himself would never wait a day to not draw. He called this, here's the one who probably said this, in the beginning there was a dot, and a line is a dot that just went on a walk. And that kind of makes sense. If you go ahead and connect all the dots together, then you get this line. Basically, he would never wait a day he could never wait to draw a line. That basically means he never waited one day to go ahead and paint. His special technique was just using lines, though. He went ahead and drew special kinds of lines to create these kinds of buds and so much more. He was more abstract painter as well too. He was also a teacher, and so much more has happened next. Okay, next up we have, these are just some of the artworks. Next up we have this person named Franz Marc. Now Franz Marc was pretty much a painter of animals. He loved painting animals, but not the conventional way too. He drew blue horses, yellow, red, and green cows, red cats if you want to. He went ahead and saw that animals themselves had a soul. He drew their shape, but he never colored them their true colors on the outside, their physical form. He always drew he said he always drew their soul, never their outside physical appearance. Because he always thought animals were closer to heaven than we humans are. Humans are capable of sinning as well too. But then later on, it started going from at least a bit wonky. They started resembling less of these kinds of animals to this, and eventually this. You have to squint very hard to actually see the animal here too. What you see here is like a cat versus an octopus. At least that's what I see. What do you see? Next up, we have Pablo Picasso. Pablo Picasso's specialty is that he was an artistic genius. Interesting story about Pablo Picasso. It was said that his father basically was a great artist. He literally was even a professor. And then he taught his son how to draw. Son, here's how you draw. Now you do it. Let's just say that compared to what his son drew, the father drew a stick figure without lines connected to the neck. This is one of Pablo Picasso's own drawings himself too, but he didn't want to go ahead and draw things the adult way. In fact, he took years of practice to go ahead and learn how to draw like a kid again. Afterwards, he saw what the kids saw, and he started drawing things in the perspective of the kids themselves. And afterwards, he was even able to develop the Cubist style that we know for him today. Of course, so much more has actually happened here too. Then he also, during the 1930s, in 1937, the Spanish Civil War happened. And then he went ahead and drew this artwork to go ahead and show that he would never approve of war too. He drew things in such a distorted way, and the town of Guernica, how do you pronounce that? Spanish people, please help me there, was bombed. And so he drew a representation of the town in his own Cubist style too. Everyone seems to be in a state of confusion, and it's scary too. There's no liveliness here. It's just gray, white, and black. Nothing else. In fact, when we went to visit the Guernica, we actually looked at it for 2 hours. In Spain, of course. That's a ridiculous amount of time to look at one painting. Alright, next up we have Marc Chagall. In fact, he told pictures with tall stories himself too. That basically means he made pictures of stories that cannot actually happen. Like this cow here, it's being milked, but then again, the human seems to look like it can be milked as well. Alright, next up we have Frida Kahlo. Now, Frida Kahlo is basically the woman with like the story of a life in pictures, of course, too. She herself lost a lot of things too. She suffered from polio, then she broke her spine at the age of 18 in a traffic accident. And then she basically managed to go ahead and draw everything and just target things with drawings too. She basically drew a family tree. After drawing the family tree, of course, so much more has actually happened here too. This is her mother and father, just right on top of baby her, and their wedding dresses, and then her grandparents in their own wedding dresses on the top of her as well too. She drew pretty well enough that she even drew this too. She also drew this, the self-portrait as a Tijuana. She actually loved her country a lot. She often wore Mexican costumes and jewelry, and she herself here painted herself wearing the costume of a Mexican Indian woman belonging to the Tijuana people. And the person right there, and the artist you see on top of her forehead is her husband. And, well, next up, possibly finally, we have Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol. He was actually born as Andy Warhol. But then I'm guessing he just took out the A because it doesn't sound American. And so much more has happened ever since. He drew things, and in like the 1960s, Elizabeth Taylor was actually considered as one of the most beautiful women in the world, and so he made this. He created a whole series of pictures of her, but then, well, that happened. And then he also drew Campbell's tomato soups. This is actually just supposed to be one of the tens of cans that he drew, but hey, it works. And he even drew his variety was like he drew different versions of the same picture, and coloring the numbers, those kind of things. He was actually great at it too. If you had like a copy of this, you could go ahead and probably draw it in the same way. But other than that, we have ended today's certain artists that children should know. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I really hope to see you guys in the next episode. And so until next time, Jana, peace. Bye bye. Campbell, and dun 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 dun. Starry, starry night.